We're talking DIY therapy, basically what we do for supplementing.
Or like during the pandemic, if we weren't able to do therapy, how we...
Do you mean my friend Crown Royal?
Hello and welcome to Table for Five with no reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation.
Thank you for taking a seat at the table. Tonight, we are talking about DIY therapy, what we've learned, how we implement things in our home, maybe some things that people have suggested that don't work that we tried and then took a hard pass on. Tonight, I have Jen.
Hi, everyone.
Rachel.
Hey, everybody.
Jamie.
Hello.
Kim.
Hi.
And I am Tabitha, and we thought we would start with Rachel Flanagan on this topic of DIY therapy. How does this roll in your house?
I don't know if I would call it therapy. That sounds very, very official, but the way that we pass time and get through is complicated. We like, I think I've explained it before, where Sealy, it sort of needs like circuit training. Like you got to do one for the mind, one for the body, one for the calm, and then all the way back around. I remember when I learned about what ABA was, like maybe a few 6 months or so into our diagnosis, I remember thinking like, oh, yeah, that's how we do things here. Like you might think that there's a task like teach my kid to go to the park appropriately. Oh no, not in Planaville. It is 3,854 steps with 5,000 more prompts. And, we just make everything super micro and then achieve that, repeat that, achieve that, repeat that, make it thicker, or, make it thicker, add the next layer and keep on building the skill. I feel like a bath is not just for cleansing. I'm sorry, Jen Dunn. It's where you put a mermaid to calm her down. Everything has this therapeutic aspect to what we do, and we have to be so aware of those parts. It's like we can't go to the freaking car without talking it through and into a parking lot or into a store. I mean, it's just all of it. I feel like our whole life is techniques and trial. Mostly failed, but a lot of trying, lots of trying.
What about you, Jamie? What do you feel about this
What do I feel about this?
topic? This DIY.
I've got a lot of feelings.
Yes. And we're saying therapy is not, we're just parents implementing the suggestions of others. So
I think for ours, like it is therapy though. Like, so right now, currently only for like another week or so, we have in-home therapy. So our house, like we have a room that we've made as a space to do therapy in. I would say at this point, about 20% of the therapy actually happens in there because now my child's grown to know that as the room for therapy, and the poor therapist is just chasing him around the house. But a space where all her things are in there. So we know we have that in there. And we also, through the therapy, like the therapy we're trained as parents to also implement that therapy. So if we're working on anything, that's just where I keep all the resources or where we can try to do it. It's also the room we try to do any like schoolwork and stuff like that sometimes too, but also implementing other things, like things we get from the speech therapist and the occupational therapist, all the ideas and everything that they have us try to do at home, having a space for that and working on that. And then outside of that room, having other things around, like we have a swing in the backyard for my son. We have a trampoline that I think we'd have anyway, but it does fulfill a lot of the sensory needs, giving my son like he's a sensory sheet or a sensory sack, like all the things like that help him regulate, having those things always around and available, and just incorporating it into the activities we do. So hand strength is a big thing we're always trying to build up with my son. So like when we go to bake cookies, it's not necessarily just to bake cookies, it's for him to play with the dough and build up that hand strength and different activities we do. Obviously he's a kid and we're doing kid things, but at the same time we're doing them with more of a purpose to implement therapies and to build on those strengths. Yeah.
Does that be cookies, James?
Lots of cookies. Although sometimes I don't eat the ones that he makes because it's a lot of just
hands in there.
Hands in there.
And then the same thing with the bath and the shower. I mean, sometimes we just have a bath. Ever since he was a baby, he loves the bath, and he was a really nice baby. It's the only place he'd be calm. I swear, like a lot of times I'm just like, okay, let's go in the bath.
Yes. Yeah, we use water excessively in our house for therapeutic purposes, for regulation, for water play, bowls on the floor. pool outside. And I think intuitively we learned these things before we knew about Nixon's diagnosis. And so if he was struggling, or if we like had high energy or something, like a trip to the bath regulated his body. And now he uses it as a tool. If he's stressed out, it's not uncommon for him to ask to take 2 or 3 baths in one day in order to regulate his own self. And he's gotten so big, he likes to sit folded in the like cup of the bath, not long ways, but short ways. And he's gotten so big now that his legs are just like draping over the side. I'm like, we need a new, bigger bath for this. But we implement like weighted vests. We have swings, we have sensory tactile stuff. And with us, we're always balancing Nora and Nixon's needs. Like, she loves touching things, loves touching sand, loves making messes out of anything she touches, like patterns out of sensory clay. That's a new thing where she'll like peel apart little tiny pieces and then she'll make a pattern on the floor. And then she doesn't want you to clean up the pattern. So she like chooses how it's going to be. And then it's not cool if you touch what's happening. But then Nixon doesn't like messes in that way. And so he's wanting you to clean up the situation, or tattling on his sister that there's a big mess, really. But the DIY therapy is like always in flux. So whatever goal you're working on, like putting on the pants or putting on the socks, and like encouraging to do that, and patience for waiting for those things to happen, takes a lot of effort. We have the same thing with hand strength. So we're always trying to encourage like forks and spoons being used. And Nixon still is not a big fan of dressing himself, or he would prefer for you to do it. So we've been working really hard on his shoes. And the OT therapist was like, you realize that he can put on his shoes, right? I'm like, oh yeah, we know he can. It's whether he would like to or not, so like balancing that stuff out is interesting. Kimmy, for you, I know that you do a lot of stuff at home with Alyssa now, especially, and during the pandemic with like different activities.
What happened with us is here you go to school until you're 22. So she had obviously gotten speech therapy, occupational therapy. She had phased out of physical therapy, but she still did the group physical therapy, and they still did like some physical activities like yoga and Zumba and stuff like that at school. And they did a lot of the communication stuff, which her teacher did aside of the speech therapy sessions, like using the Prolo to Go device, working on whatever they were doing at school. And then when she came out of school and transitioned into adult services, they were just kind of like, yeah, she didn't really want to use the device, but she also didn't want to use it at home. Like, we've never really used it here, because anytime I ever attempted to it, she like made it very clear that she did not want that. I think she just associated it with school and work, like school's like work to them, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And she didn't want to do it at home. And we didn't really push her. Sometimes if she like was hurt or something like that, or like didn't feel good, we might pull it out to try to like help navigate that. But that's really the only times that came out of her bag. She had another iPad for home that was separate from the one that went back and forth to school. That one just stayed in her bag. So when she went into adult services, she went with her communication device, and every time they pulled it out of her bag, she would scream, and then they would put it back in. So then obviously she just did that every time because she didn't want them to pull it out of her bag. So they're like, yeah, like she doesn't want us to use it. We aren't going to force her to do it because she's an adult. And I'm like, it's her communication though. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's her way to communicate. I can communicate with her because I'm her mother and I know all of her things. It would be better if she would use the communication device. So like, I'm not against that, but I know her looks, I know her gestures. I'm very in tune with her. Not saying 100% of the time I can figure it out, but like 90% of the time. And then I'm like, well, it's going to be all this work that all these therapists have done down the drain. And she uses it very well. So then I was like, I don't know what to do. So because she wouldn't let me touch that iPad, I went out and purchased another iPad, which she wouldn't touch at first, because that was my iPad. You know what I mean? It wasn't her iPad. So now we have 3 freaking iPads. The one that she won't let you touch, her iPad that she uses, and now there's another one. Then I started working with her, just doing like structured activities, which she was like resistant at first, but then she kind of did it. I was end up being able to find a speech therapist that like took her, but it took a while to find one that would take an adult. So I just kind of started doing just random things like activities with flashcards, like little games, like just whatever I could think of that would entail like using the iPad with it. And then once she got the speech therapy, they kind of helped me a little more with like, I had more examples because I would see what they would do. So then I'd be like, oh, all right, I can like do something like that. So just a lot of stuff like that. But I feel like we're always doing stuff without even realizing we're doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're always being a speech therapist because I'm always trying to get her to repeat stuff, slowing stuff down, showing her things. I trying to identify things for her. You know, it's like you just do it. I think it just naturally you do it because when that deficit is there, you're always going to try to help move that along. So I
I
mean,
love
that's
how
like,
you play the acorn game and
I
how
love that acorn
over
game.
time it has molded and changed. Like maybe not
yeah,
the acorn game specifically, but the way that you progress through a game
yeah.
and like build a skill, build a skill, build a skill.
And
I
I
just
just
love
kind
it.
of, take away like maybe the certain game isn't going to work for her because it might be like too hard for her or too many directions. So I just adapt it to what I think that she can understand. And I kind of always aim for an attainable goal first because then she's not going to want to do something that's too hard. It is hard because I'm not a therapist. You know what I mean? I'm not a special education teacher. I'm her mom. And she could just like not want to do stuff sometimes. But I think she really likes the one-on-one interactions where we just kind of sit and do it. Although she has been more resistant of it lately. So that's what makes it hard. You know, I feel like it also sometimes just makes you feel inadequate as a parent when you can't do all these things. But like in reality, you can't be a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a special education teacher, a behaviorist, and a mom. Like, I mean, it's just so much.
What?
You should have
Yes,
told people that during the pandemic because that's
I
Yeah.
know. So what,
supposed to do.
but what I
Yes,
mean by that is like, it's so much to do well and really do each thing adequately. It's not
Right.
that you can't, because obviously we'll still do it, but you feel like you're coming off short somewhere. You know, I feel bad when I don't sit there and do stuff with her. Like I feel guilty about it. Like I haven't been doing as much lately, and it's like I feel bad about that. And then it's the thing with her is so hard because like now she may not be so willing to do it. So it's like I might have lost that ability to be able to do what I was doing because she's a stubborn little person who just doesn't want to do things that she doesn't want to do. So, you know, I think it is a lot sometimes to be put on, especially I'm the only one who does it here. So it's all put on me. It's just a lot to take on. But
Yeah.
I do think that we naturally do things like when she was younger and I didn't necessarily know about all these things because the information wasn't really out there. She was doing the tubs. She did 9 tubs a day because she would just sit and let the water run on
Yeah.
her and get like that sensory input. And, you know, we allowed her to do that. And she had a mini trampoline in her bedroom. She had a big, huge yoga ball that she would sit on and bounce on. And it's like you kind of just do all those things without realizing that you're doing them. Even though, like Jamie said, like you could do that for your other kids too, but like it's different when there's a need, like a actual need for them to have these things. You just kind of find a way to do it, whether you get a swing or you have a swing set in the backyard, you lots of water play, you know, there's just all these little things that you're constantly doing to try to like give them the input or interact with them. And like Jamie said, we cook with Alyssa, and it's not to cook necessarily, it's just giving her the experience of doing something. She likes that. She's better than me at cracking an egg. Like she does it so precisely and she likes to do it. It makes her feel good, makes her feel, I think, purposeful. You know, we do it for that, just to give her the opportunity to do that, not necessarily just to
Eat the cookies.
yeah. So
What about you, Jen?
It's evolved over the years. I cracked about the bathtub, but we would spend hours, I mean, hours in the bathroom. I would read a book sometimes. She just, that sensory play in the water. You know, we have a swing in our living room. That's, I think, is therapy right there.
absolutely.
Yeah, she finds art very therapeutic.
Oh,
So,
yes.
and she
Yeah.
puts on almost a spa music that goes with it, and she will spend hours doing a canvas
She's
with
so
the
good at
music
it, too.
playing. Yeah, so that's very
Yeah.
therapeutic. Like I said, it kind of just changes as she's gotten older. You know, we did the weighted sheets, the weighted blanket, which she wanted nothing to do with when she was younger. Now she'll request heavy gray blanket when she needs that input, which is fantastic. She knows it's accessible. She'll just ask for it. We also have a yoga ball. I do a lot of rolling on her back, which is something Chelsea told me to buy for the house, that kind of stuff. She's just really taken to gardening now. So we've just planted a bunch of flowers and she really likes to water them and, you know, do all that kind of stuff. So just kind of going with what she's great.
Dance
Yeah.
and music too have
Dance and
always
music,
been,
yeah.
like,
Yeah, dance, ballet.
you can
So
you can tell that she feels the music so much.
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, so that kind of stuff.
You do a lot of stuff with food too.
sorry.
A lot of like you
Yeah.
implementing therapy based on food, like how she likes it on the plate, how it's cut, you know, everything being the same and similar for her, well, to eat.
Mhm.
I noticed that a lot with like as a parent implementing therapy, like we put it into our grooves of our day, like which
Yeah.
plate we use, which cup is gonna get the mouth going, or like
Well, like everything's the same, right? The other day I
yeah.
put the goldfish on the other side of the lunchbox to see if it threw her off.
How'd it go?
It was fine. It was fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's so real though. It's like you cut the ego a different way because it's been
Yeah.
a good morning for 3 days just to see if you can push. You just redid grilled cheese, didn't you? Bring
I
back
did.
grilled cheese. Did I see
Just
that?
brought back on a different bread.
Ooh.
On a different bread.
It's all therapy.
Oh yeah.
It's always in flux too, depending on like which therapy is going on at the time. Like, do you have occupational? Do you have speech? Do you
Yes,
like
very
what's the
much.
focus right now? What behaviors are you trying to reduce by giving them what they need through the therapeutic interventions or not? Freedom. You also want to give them freedom to like be a kid and not be implementing a lot of stuff. But a lot of times that is also therapy, like giving them space and understanding their body and all that stuff.
Well,
Like,
yeah, especially even
and-
like with
and-
speech, coming home from speech and having all that, here's what you need to do at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so you
Plus,
literally
yeah.
were doing it at home, implementing
Mhm.
the goals they gave you. And it was a lot of work.
That's what I'd say with most of these therapies. I mean, like outside of ABA, where that's more of like a 30 to 40 hour a week thing for at least most little kids. I mean, these are like 20 to 45-minute sessions
Mhm.
a week. And then they send you home with like a list of things to do. So it's like you kind of have to as a parent. And I think with all of our kids, no matter the age, yeah, we're doing things that are like fun and things you would maybe do for a typical kid or items you would have around for him, but it's just more purposeful. Like we know we have the kinetic sand because he likes to play with that. It calms him, but it's also like a fun activity that all the kids, like my nephew and my daughter, both like doing too. So it's kind of just like thinking things out a little more.
But I also think there's a flip side to it because I think that there's sometimes like unrealistic expectations put onto us by some of these people. Like I remember
What?
when Alyssa had ABA, and granted, it was very different then, and she only had 3 hours a day. And they were like, oh, this is what you need to do. You need to like fill out all these. And every time and it's like, well, I have another child besides Alyssa. Like, do you know what I'm saying? My husband
Mhm.
works 3 jobs, so it's only me here. Like, and then she'd like be annoyed if they weren't like all filled out. And it's like, well, I don't have to tell you, lady. I'm trying to like keep my other child safe from this child. That's gonna come before like filling out a paper, which
And
I
your
know.
data charts that
Yeah.
are useless.
And like these are like the ABCs. So you did like the antidote, the behavior, the consequence, like which is all fine and well. It's the same thing when we're doing the picture exchange stuff. And they're like, no, you have to do it this way. You have to, you have to have this here. And it's like a lot of these things they're a lot easier now, but this is before there was so much like at home stuff that you could access.
There's a
But
lot of expectations too that we know what they're talking about sometimes too, like with Nora's pecs specifically when they were doing pecs, because Nixon never really took to pecs. He didn't like it. He wasn't for it at all. We never really used it that much with him. They would explain things to me, but then I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you please send me a video of like how to implement this? Because I don't know what you're saying to me. I don't know how to do this at home because I have never done this before. I need more context to the situation or something because I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah,
And they use acronyms. Sometimes you don't know what they're talking about. Or
Oh,
they-
those in
Oh,
the
to
beginning.
hell
In the
with it.
beginning, those
Yeah.
were awful.
Yeah.
Like, what's an SLP? What is
Yeah.
like,
I don't
but I
know.
will say things like speech. Jackie said, if you're not doing the work at home,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
is not going to be successful. So whether
Absolutely.
you begrudge me or not for giving you this homework, you have to do it at home because that's where she's going to learn in the context of what, like if she says juice, you need to elaborate on anyway.
And sometimes that pushing is hard. That pushing
Yeah.
back and forth. It like Nora, I was trying to work with her AC device under the table one day, and I was like, every time she would come in, I'd model a button, and then when she left, I'd model another button, and she climbed under there, and she picked up that AC device and she put it outside that tent.
So no, we're done.
We're not doing this, Mom. Thanks for the modeling, but no.
No, we're not
Well,
doing this.
And that's what I'm talking about too. It's like sometimes like they're more willing to do something for somebody else or somewhere else.
Yes.
But then when you
yes.
try to do it at home, it's a different story. And then some therapists are very understanding and others are like, no, you have to do this. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, I have to keep everybody in my house safe.
Yeah, and they give
That's number
Yeah.
one.
But I think those are the
Ladies.
ones probably with children, the ones who realize that it's not that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And I've had people come into the house and they're like, oh, she's not like this at school. And I'm like, well,
yeah.
she's like this here.
Welcome to
You know,
Darville.
And I think that's part of
Um,
like therapy at home is giving him a break from therapy in ways. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
we still, I mean, behaviorally, it is really important that we stay consistent across the board at therapy, at school, at home. Like, so if there's a big behavior, we have to react in the way
Right.
we've asked everyone else to react. But otherwise, if it's a Saturday and we don't have anything to do, he can do whatever the crap he wants. And we're not
Yeah.
going to be pushing him or things like that. But that is therapy to me for him, is giving him a break from all this stuff.
Yeah, because they work
Yes.
so hard. They work so hard. And I think about that all the time, like giving my kids an opportunity to just be themselves without me like intervening if it's safe and if it's what they want to
Mhm.
do, and having times where if they're overdoing their own thing, like I don't need to be right up in there all the time. I need to give them some space to just explore and feel things the way they want to feel, and I don't need to like redirect them or give them tools every minute of the day.
Right.
Although a lot of the times we do, especially when we're outside of the house.
they're so particular too. So that's
Yeah.
what's very hard. I think that in hindsight, I realized that the reason Alyssa wouldn't use her device at the new program is because it was still set with everything from the old school, down to the school, the teachers, everything was the same. So she's probably like, this is a different school, you moron. Like, why would I use this?
This
here?
isn't for here. Yeah,
Like,
this
I
isn't
mean,
for
when
here.
you really think about it from her perspective, like it doesn't make sense for her to use that there.
Mhm.
But it
Yeah,
wasn't
she's,
helpful
like,
that there
bringing a
was
map.
nobody who's really trained enough to be like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. She won't use this. We'll do a visual board. It's just kind of like they're not gonna spend the time and the energy into doing that because that's not. This isn't school. It's not therapy. So it's like if it's becoming something that's gonna be harder, everything is harder in the beginning, and then when you get over that kind of hump, then it becomes easier. Just like her with the new iPad, like she wasn't going to use it. Eventually she took it over, but like it took so long. So it's like things are just so particular, or there's like a reason that like we're not clearly seeing that they won't do it in a certain room or with a certain person.
It depends on the kid too. Like Nixon is more flexible with transferring skills from one place to another. Like if he learns something at school or if he learns something at therapy, he's really good at implementing that at home, like across the board. Nora, no, thank you. She's like, we don't do work here. This is my place. I chill. I do what I want. Like it's much harder to get her like on board. And we usually have to modify what we're doing at home compared to what she's doing someplace else. So like if
Yeah.
they're doing it every 30 minutes, like potty training, we're doing that right now. She has no problem using the potty outside of the house. At home, we're still like in the early stages of potty training over here, but we've had to like change her routine, like you were saying, Kim, change her routine to make it not the same thing as at school, because then it's what we do at home instead of like she compartmentalizes those
Mhm.
environments and it doesn't transfer the same way. But Nixon, I mean, he's like, we got this. Nailed it there, nailed it here. We're going with
Well,
it.
and it's like number one, they can kind of figure out like what they can get away with and what they can't get away with, right? But there's this other part of it that it's like, are you gonna spend your only time with her screaming and yelling and you guys butting heads because like you want her to do the specific thing? It's like, when do you decide to just let her be a kid and spend quality positive time with her, or be a therapist and stick to your guns and be like, no, this is what we're doing? So it's like, it's just a very fine line, I feel like, especially, I mean, stubbornness is just such a thing with our children. So
I wonder where she gets that from. With Jesse in the beginning, before we had the resources, especially, like I was always trying to work with him on stuff, and they were recommending before we got into early education and everything, things to do at home. And it was like I was running at a wall. Like, and it was like I was like getting so frustrated that like when he actually did go off to school and there was other people helping him, I was so freaking grateful. But I did got to a point where I was like, it's healthier for him and I if we just like slow this down. If like the
Yeah.
pushing's not working, it's making it harder. So I think that's definitely a good point, Kimmy.
And like with Alyssa, she won't do the virtual speech anymore, which is very unfortunate, but like she was clearly telling me by destroying my house and like self-injuring and screaming, like I kept going, oh well, she'll do it, we'll get her to do it, we just gotta show her that all the yelling and screaming wasn't gonna work. But like she was clearly telling me that she didn't want to do it, and I had to at that point take a step back and be like, okay, I need to listen to what she's communicating to me. It's not about her doing what I want her to do for whatever reason. And I just think there was just tons and tons of changes with therapists. They kept changing. She needs to know what to expect. And the last therapist she had just didn't mesh with her. Too commanding and too wordy. And I think that was just like her last straw. That's only speculation on my part because I don't know 100%, but that's the closest thing that I can think of that makes sense to me. And she's clearly, even if I bring up the word, she starts screaming. And she liked it and enjoyed it before. So it wasn't like she was doing it and like didn't like it. But I had to step back and like be like, okay, I need to listen to what she's clearly trying to communicate with me that she does not want to do this.
And look
honestly,
at what an explosion, like her speech has become more clear now that she's doing it at her pace rather than on Tuesdays at 3. I'm making that up, but you know that.
And I did say that to my husband. I said, it's funny that she's seeming to do it a little more now, although she did go through a period where like it kind of got like quieter and not as clear, and she's using the words more. And I'm not working with her as much, and she's not doing the speech. So sometimes it's not always a bad thing to take a step back or take a break. I feel like we just have all this pressure to like do all these things because we want them to get the most out of it and progress as much as they can. But sometimes taking a step back is what the child needs at the time and what you need.
It's hard too because we've done therapies like a functional. I was just reading because we have this time hop, and I had taken a screenshot of another therapy center saying that we were the wrong fit. Like I must have sent it to you guys or sent it to my husband or something. And in it says she can't go to ABA because she's too behavioral, but we do have this FBA program. And I like instantly flashed to this whole process of FBA, which is a functional behavioral behavior analysis. And basically that means that they taught us to data chart. And like Kimmy said, it's the antecedent, it's the whole thing. Well, the like gist of my kid kicking the wall and me and all of the things at that point, the guy thought that if we offered her a fancy bread which is a croissant, banana, or hot or cold water, and left it at these 4 things, that we would take out the struggle and or the stall and or excuse to not go to bed of being hungry. And so the whole thought process of this was to offer these things to her before she could make the demand so that there was no need to make the demand. Well, I took that and ran with it, didn't I? And now I've got this Hellcat that demands everything like a little tiny baby dictator. And I just thought I was doing her favors, trying to like come to her with this idea. I feel like a constant cruise director, but I'm that whole thing of head to Italy and show up in Holland. Well, today we're doing more pasta, and she only speaks tulips. It's just like I felt for years that I was doing the right thing, momming her in this like pre-need thing.
It's like you're constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. You know?
Yeah. Walk. I'm trying to push a block into wheel form because you're just trying that hard. It's terrible.
Well, and I feel like sometimes we get this impression that it's not okay to say no, like when you have a professional, and I think we've said this before on the podcast, like when you have a professional telling you should try something, especially in the beginning when you don't have your bearings and you're like trying to do as much as you can to get as much resources because nothing works after 6 years old or whatever people are telling you. It takes some time to like find your no and just be like, no, we're not doing that. Like I'm so much better at that now. I am all for trying anything, but I know for a fact that my daughter's not going to eat root vegetables at this point in time. And
Or that she'll eat the stickers from the sticker chart. Like, please step off.
we're not doing that. And it is to balance out like the things that do work. So, like we can start with cucumbers or like cauliflower in the secret macaroni or, like other avenues. But the beets, she's not down for that.
It's that constant balance and that push and pull of like, sometimes I'm like, nope, there's no way. I know my kid that, and then I'm like, oh, she did it.
Yeah.
So there is something about like giving things a try and trying to be open to things, but then there is also a lot of benefit in saying, you know what, today we're going to the beach and you're going to get sand and you're going to get the water or whatever it is, something that's enjoyable to them and it's still beneficial to them. There's nothing wrong with like sometimes taking a day to do something like that instead.
Well, we tried the root vegetables. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm down to try it, but I'm also going to come back and say, no, this did not work.
Told you.
It was not great. She's not for it. We're passing on that whole suggestion. We're moving on to the next thing.
I hate to be the one to say I told you so, but
so this is our DIY therapy. I mean, there's so much to talk about therapy. Like we all have done all kinds of things and different needs of our kids and different skills. We try our best at home to follow some kind of advice from professionals because we don't have degrees in this area and we are learning as we go. But we also want to have our kids be kids sometimes, and that's okay.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of benefit and there's a lot to be said for real life experience and exposures for our children. Sometimes those things are very important as well. And if you don't sometimes do those things when they're young, it just gets harder and harder to introduce them. So
yeah.
Just quick before we do the next times, I mom alongside each of the four of you, and it's a pleasure because it's like taking part in a brainstorm all the time. The way that Kimmy talks to Alyssa and reinforces and pauses is different than the way that Tabs empowers Nixon to explain this dinosaur and then stops before he can like get going so that it keeps him calm, but he's still got this engagement, and different than how Jamie and Jen do. Like, it's just such a pleasure to mom alongside you guys. And I feel like watching the different ways that you implement music, or James is getting outside and using the trampoline, or whatever, like bringing therapists into the home, it's all so beneficial for me. It's like better than Pinterest because I get to watch this living option. And to our listeners, we know that we come at you with 5 different opinions, maybe sometimes 3 because we all agree, or 4 or whatever one. But
or 6 because sometimes we have split personalities.
Or 6 because I flip flop, whatever. Yeah, but really, we know that you're doing the same darn thing, and we want to leave you with some empowerment that it is okay to fail out of these things, or to realize after 7 months that it's the therapist, or it's the not the right fit, or the car ride to get there's too long, or it isn't worth the ice cream at the end, or the battle to behave. Like, it's just so hard to pass these hurdles, and however you're learning it is great, and you're doing a good job because it's like living a brainstorm. Like it's
true.
Hard. It's really hard.
If you're trying too hard and you yourself need a break, that's okay too. Because sometimes we just need a pause on implementing for a hot minute.
Put the laminator in the closet and take a month off.
Yeah, put your feet in the sand yourself and take in that ocean view if you live near an ocean. Next time, I'm so excited. We have storytellers. First time we're having dads do storytellers. June is Father's Day month. We got some dads to come tell their stories, so get ready for that. They're great.
Life hacks with dads.
Life hacks with dads next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the table for the 3rd episode of our 11th series, Life Hacks. If you are enjoying the podcast, please make sure you are subscribed and rate and review us. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram also. You can email us at tablefor5podcast@gmail.com if you'd like to get in touch with us. We have new episodes every Monday. Join us next week for our Storytellers episode, Father's Day edition. We'll see you there. Bye.